years, how do you feel your songwriting has evolved?
I don't really know. I guess it's just, maybe it's become more, I almost want to say personal, but it's always been pretty personal. I think it's like a craft like any other craft, almost like cooking or painting. You just sort of, I guess the hope is that you get better at it. You start to understand it a little bit better. So hopefully it's gotten better.
The importance of the piano for this latest record, it allowed you to explore new ways of adding layers rather than just using a piano for texture. How key was that?
It was pretty key. Just basically, you know, I've always written on a guitar, and I've played guitar for a very long time. And I've always written my songs on guitar, so suddenly having this new instrument that I wasn't familiar with, just to sort of write on and to use, you know, like to have this sort of new tool, it was really important in the songwriting because it made it interesting and it kind of made it like a challenge. So things became very interesting that had I done them on a guitar, maybe they would have seemed boring, and maybe I would have like finished the song for certain reasons. And it's almost like I wrote very simply, but it seemed complex just because the instrument was new and I didn't know quite exactly what I was doing. So a good example that I usually use is, you know, I'd be playing a C chord on the piano and it would just be a song that would just go C to F, C to F. But if I was playing on the guitar, I've done that so many times before on the guitar, so that would seem like, you know, kind of this worn out thing that I'd already done. But since I was doing it on the piano, it seemed very new and it seemed exciting. For
you, the record Singing Soul, how would you personally characterize the mood?
It's sort of, you know, the whole reason I called it Singing Soul is kind of a metaphor for, the instrument is a metaphor for the feeling that I was trying to create, which is basically something that's very pretty, very beautiful, but also sort of creepy. So there's like a sort of sinister, eerie vibe to it. So I was just trying to create an album that sounded like that, beautiful but also eerie.
And tell us about the influence of Los Angeles. I understand it's a place where you can have your own space and solitude. And how did that help for the record to become sonically tense, bearing that in mind?
There's a couple of ways that I like to look at it, and having done a lot of interviews on the album, I've kind of come up with some answers that I believe to be true. But you know, first off, Los Angeles to me is a lot different than what I think a lot of people think of when they think of LA. And moving to LA from New York and moving to the neighborhood that I moved to, which is called Mount Washington, it seems very rural to me. And it's sort of, for the first time in my adult life, I'm surrounded by like a lot of foliage and a lot of trees and plants and wildlife. And I like to think that sort of helped craft the album, and that my surroundings are very dense, you know, like it's very dense with nature. And I think I was trying to create something similar to that. And also, I don't know, just being in LA and being kind of staying put for a couple of months and being able to write an album all on my own. And there's plenty of days where I wouldn't really leave the house or didn't feel the need to leave the house. Whereas in a place like New York, where I had been living, you kind of feel crazy if you don't leave the house. And usually the circumstances that your living situation is such that you want to leave the house. Whereas in LA, it was the first time that I found myself in a comfortable place, and I would just kind of write all day.
And you mentioned you went for walks often just before the sun went down, just to kind of give you some kind of clarity and peace of mind. Did that help seep into and inform the music? Yeah,
for sure. Sometimes in very indirect ways and sometimes in very direct ways. And there was like a nice schedule that I had myself on of just writing and recording, and then I'd have to leave the house at some point, and it was perfect to just go on a walk. And you know, you can, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're writing about, kind of your day-to-day will always sort of make its way into the music, at least for me personally.
And I wanted to get your views on some of the material on this album. Firstly, Dorothy, and you mentioned you wanted this song to be dreamlike. You've actually mentioned the word liquidy and surreal. What was it about this song that incorporated that type of feel for you?
Well, so when I was writing it, because I was writing it alone as opposed to with a producer or with a band, I kind of had no rules. So I was doing things where I would think like, oh, I can't really do that, or I don't know if that sounds good. But because it was just me, I was like, well, why don't I just do it anyways? Because I think that idea is cool. And like with that song, like I had all these ideas with it. Like I'll just keep throwing lyrics into the verses, and then the verses will just stop, and then it'll go. I'll sing about this instrument, and the verse will just stop, and it'll go to this instrument. And the subject matter of that song is just, it's sort of all about traveling and the sort of people you meet along the way. And I've been doing it for a long time, and So I kind of just want to create this sort of dreamlike scenario in which characters are kind of coming at you, and different like instruments and music is coming at you, and I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, I mean the end result is absolutely stellar. Just feeling aimless and not having a schedule, not doing something in particular, is that this type of thing that gives you, peace of mind?
Sort of, but that's funny because on tour you don't really feel too aimless. It's actually the most of a schedule that I have in my life, and then when I get home, that's when I feel very aimless. But and I like tour for the reason that it's a schedule and I always have something to do or somewhere to be. I feel like I have a purpose. But yeah, I do like feeling aimless. I feel like I can achieve like a sense of happiness when I'm sort of just kind of lost. Not too lost, but lost in like a healthy physical way. Just sort of like, I guess in LA I go on a lot of like long drives and just sort of just driving around, and if I have good music and the windows are down, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's true. And when I lived in New York, I would do things, if I had nothing to do on a certain day, I would just sort of get on the train and take it to wherever and just get out at a random stop and explore that part of the city. And I don't know, I have a thing, it's like I never even really remember like my favorite restaurants' names or my favorite bars' names or my favorite parks' names or anything like that. I just kind of like to just let it all kind of like flow through me. And
you're intrigued by religious imagery. What is it about, like, the various cultures and traditions when you, for example, tour and you see religious? I mean, it can lead to, you mentioned it leads to things like violence and, unity, but what intrigues you most about it?
I don't know. Sometimes I just think it's like you think about like a church or something, and it's funny because I think about like specifically in Europe or in England, when we have like a day off where we end up going, and we'll go to like some ancient cathedral or I don't know. It's just they're beautiful. They're just beautiful things, and there's a lot of complications that come with all of them, but they're just these things that have been there since the beginning of time, and it's interesting to like watch it interplay into our lives in 2016. Do
you still get told often that you look like Val Kilmer?
Yes, and then I think I kind of played it up a little bit.
Yeah,
because I think it's funny. It's funny because I remember my school ID when I was in 11th grade. I got my school ID, and I remember someone telling me that I looked like Val Kilmer. And then I haven't been told that since, but then recently people have said it, which I think is funny.
And you're a fan of The Sopranos and The Wire. Is Fargo possibly one of the best seasons of the television series that you've seen recently?
Fargo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I loved the second season even more than the first, but I loved them both.
What sort of opportunities do you relish as you look ahead?
I think just sort of becoming the artist that you want to be. I think it's important for people to kind of think about what they want to put out into the world and how they want to do it and what they want their actions to say. I think that's something that I'm learning a lot as more people start to listen, is that your actions speak a lot, or speak very loudly, and like, or even, like Twitter as example, or like Instagram as example, like it's getting to a point you have to kind of take seriously what you do, or just put it doesn't have to be too serious, but you have to put thought into what you're saying, because after a certain amount of time, enough people are starting to hear it, and so you want to make sure that you're trying to convey the message that you want to convey. And so I think just thinking about what message you want to send, and just making good art.